On today's episode of Let's Talk F1, we discuss F1 2018 driver transfers that could happen as early as next weekend in Monza. We do a little analysis on the crash that happened this weekend at Spa. The F2 report is back, and I'll be announcing what team I'll be driving for in my F1 2018 career mode. All this and more, next. Welcome back everyone to your weekly instalment of Let's Talk F1, your weekly podcast all about Formula 1 here on the F1 Reviews channel. It's a place, an hour in time where we just discuss Formula 1, we discuss a bit of news, a bit of what's gone on over the weekend. We also talk about Formula 2 sometimes, which is the case today. Like I say, welcome back. And you know what? In this 1 week gap we have between Belgium and Monza, I think this is going to be a pretty carnage week in the world of Formula 1. Hopefully that thumbnail gives you a little bit of an indication why. It looks like the driver transfer market is about to explode, and any day now we're going to have some news that driver changes will be happening before Monza. I am extremely confident about that. So let's just jump into it then, and let's start with that guy on the left, Lance Stroll, and this team right here, Racing Point Force India. Now, going into the Belgian Grand Prix, a lot of question marks about whether this team would even be on the grid, whether they had the right licensing. It was a huge talking point. We found out late on into the week, I think it was on the Thursday evening, Force India were back. They were going to be at the Belgian Grand Prix under the new name Racing Point Force India. So they still want to be known as Force India, but officially they are Racing Point Force India as opposed to Sahara Force India. So they were on the grid, they were racing, well, qualifying, the best qualifying of the season, the best qualifying in the team's history, and as a first ever official race as Racing Point Force India, a second row lockout with a third and fourth on the grid was fantastic. In the race, couldn't keep up with the top boys, however, they were able to hold on to 5th and 6th, which in the first ever official race for the team, there they are, holding off the two Haas cars. A great drive from Ocon and Perez. Perez, despite qualifying behind Ocon, in that opening lap was able to get in front of him while fighting with Hamilton and Vettel, but as the race progressed was both overtaken by Verstappen, by Bottas. But still, I mean, a great weekend for the team. Now, what we're going to talk about today isn't really anything to do with the race itself, despite the fantastic result. What we're going to be talking about is the consequences of Lawrence Stroll and his consortium of businessmen buying out that Force India team. The big story, the big telling point of this move is the fact that Lance Stroll is most likely, by the end of this weekend, moving to Force India in time for the Italian Grand Prix, which officially starts on Thursday with the driver press conferences, which means we have the rest of today, the rest of tomorrow, and Thursday morning to really find out anything crazy in the world of Formula 1. Now, what I'll do is just discuss all the implications of this, and then at the end I'll give you my verdict on whether we are going to see a big change or whether it's just rumours, like we see so often in Formula 1, though this year has been very different. So, like I mentioned, Lance Stroll to Force India. We did think that this would happen next season, but it appears over the Belgian Grand Prix weekend, Lance Stroll, the Force India team, and Williams have given some very sort of clue-filled answers about where Lance could be going as early of this weekend. It looks like the Belgian Grand Prix was Lance Stroll's last ever race with the Williams team, which is incredible to say, but I will be honest here, my predictions at the beginning of the year were not great, were they? If you can remember them, I'm sorry for that. If you can't remember them, don't search for them, would be my advice. But one thing I said was that I thought over the course of the year, and many people agreed with me at the time, that we'd have a change at Williams at some point in the season, and Stroll and Stroll would not be the lineup come the end of the year. But I think that prediction for a lot of people, including myself, came more from the fact that we thought one of them would be out of the sport completely. We thought Sorokin or Stroll would be completely out of the fold. I don't think anyone expected it to happen quite in this manner. I know it hasn't gone through yet, but it does look very, very likely. And I think it's crazy that either Perez or Ocon will be out at Force India. It's looking at the moment that this man on screen right now, Sergio Perez, he's the one who's going to stay for at least another year with the team alongside Lance Stroll, which I think, let's focus on the fact that Stroll's going to the team for a second. I think for Lance Stroll, that's great. Up against Felipe Massa, in his first year of F1, he struggled, yes, and was beat by Massa. A lot of people, including myself, think he's progressed over that first year, and now this year is a much more complete driver, but it's hard to compare him because he's against Sergei Sorokin. So I think going up against Perez is the perfect match for Lance Stroll. I do think Perez is the better of the two drivers by a comfortable margin. I will throw that out there. A lot of people will notice I'm a defender of Lance Stroll, but I don't think he's anywhere near as good as a driver as Sergio Perez. And Sergio Perez is also a driver that I think is getting past his best a bit now. Isn't quite that 2012 Sergio Perez that, well, I don't want to say dominated in the Sauber because he didn't, but pulled off some incredible results in the Sauber. But then again, he's still one of the better drivers on the grid, Sergio Perez. So if Lance Stroll can prove himself against Perez, that's great for him. If not, more question marks will be brought up over his career, and then his father will be in a very difficult position. Does he keep Stroll in the team? Does he get in someone else? So that'll be a really interesting dynamic in the future. But the bigger story, I think, with this whole debacle is Esteban Ocon. The man this year has been incredible. Well, very good, I should say. Incredible might be a bit steep. But that being said, he's been comfortably the better of the two Force India drivers this year. The only two real outliers where you could argue that Perez has been the better of the two was that podium in Baku, and then this weekend in Spa was just able to beat out Esteban for that 5th place. But apart from that, Ocon has been the more consistent of the two drivers, the better qualifier of the two drivers, and I think it's a real shame for Esteban and his career that he's been forced out of the team like this, and it's really only because he wasn't there for the long run. Perez was asked to put the team into administration because he was their long-standing driver and had had a career in F1 before, so the fallback wasn't as hard. If Esteban Ocon had done that, a lot of question marks would be, is he just trying to do this to make Force India a Mercedes B team? Is he trying to do this to force his way into Mercedes? All those sort of questions. And questions would be asked, why is this guy who's been at the team just a year putting the team into administration? So Perez has got himself further in the good books of that team purely based on the fact he's been there longer and took the big risk, because it was a huge, huge risk, Perez putting the team into administration. But that's pretty much going to keep him the seat, give him the seat at Force India, lock him down. Ocon is too good of a driver to leave F1. He's got too much experience as well to leave F1. So where's he going to go? Well, leaving him out with the rest of the season for sure is a possibility. That could very well happen. Lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of different sources have suggested this won't be happening, and he'll be finding another drive for the remainder of the season. Now, there are two big teams, big names in the world of Formula One that are really the front runners to attain Esteban's talents, not only for next year, for the season after potentially, but for the rest of this year, starting next weekend at MONZA. The big leader in all this is McLaren. That isn't really too big of a shock considering Alonso's out next year, but his teammate, Stoffel van Dorn, I don't want to be harsh on him that bad, but he's probably been one of the worst drivers, if not the worst driver of the season so far. In a car that at the beginning of the year had the potential to get into the points, and Fernando Alonso has got a considerable more amount of points. I think it's around 40 points more than Van Dorn, which when you transfer the sort of exchange rates of the points worth for the top teams in a team like McLaren, that is a huge distance. That is a ginormous distance. And the pace between them, although in qualifying, isn't miles off, although Alonso has outqualified Van Dorn every single race, Van Dorn has still been nowhere near good enough, especially for a team like McLaren, especially when there's options like Ocon. They got Sainz coming in next year. He was under pressure this weekend, had an awful weekend, did Van Dorn. Considering as well, Hungary, the weekend before, was his best race of the season. So people were starting to think, oh, maybe he'll get that momentum now. But finally, after 2 years of the team constantly backing Van Dorn, it finally looks like those cracks are showing, starting to emerge, and he could be out. And it looks very much like, by the time we get to Monza, a track McLaren I don't think will be too great at, it looks like Esteban Ocon could very well be in that car. Which I think for McLaren, especially for next year, and even this year, having Alonso and Ocon in the team, and the next year having Sainz and Ocon, that is some fantastic lineups. That really is, and that could, I'll mention it now, that could shut down the door for Lando Norris in the future, so that's something they'll be considering, and that will completely throw Van Dorn out as a free agent. That will completely do that. So it's a big question mark for McLaren, how they want to play this. If they want Norris in the car, who we'll talk about a little bit later on in the F2 report, he's really starting to kick on now in Formula 2. Or do McLaren want to stick with Ocon, take him off Mercedes' hands? Do they want to just take him on loan for a year off Mercedes? Then they can bring in Norris. Lots and lots and lots of question marks around this move. My opinion, what I think is going to happen here, I think Stroll, at some point or another, will go to Force India. That's obvious. Let's just theorise. Let's just say now. Let's put it down now. Let's say it's going to happen this week. Let's say it's going to happen tomorrow. Stroll is at Force India for Monza. Ocon, I think he will go to McLaren. I think that's sensible for McLaren. I think that's sensible for Mercedes. And I think he will go on a 1.5-year loan spell, the rest of this season and next season. That gives Mercedes a chance to test out Bottas for a couple more years. Do they want to keep him? Is Hamilton going to stay in the sport? All things Mercedes need to consider. But it gives McLaren the option to say, look, Esteban's not our driver completely. He's on loan, much like Sainz is at Renault this year. And they can say at the end of the year, Esteban, you've been great, but we got Norris now. You're only on loan. See you later. But it also gives that option, if Norris isn't too great at the end of F2 this year, if he doesn't win it next year, and they don't want to bring him into Formula 1, it gives them those ties with Mercedes that they can say, look, we'd love to keep Esteban, let's sort out a deal. So I think for the rest of the year, I can see Ocon moving to McLaren. But there is other options, but I do think that is what's going to happen. I will quickly go through the other option, which makes more sense, but for Ocon's career, I think will definitely be more detrimental. So, the other idea is that Ocon could go to Williams, a straight swap between Ocon and Lance Stroll. Now, for Williams, that makes sense, gives them a chance to test out Sorokin, gives them, I don't want to say a high-profile driver, but he is known for having talent, especially considering he's proved himself against Sergio Perez and Pascal Wehrlein. So for Williams, it makes sense. Where it doesn't make sense is Mercedes and Ocon himself. For Mercedes, they're giving up their star man. I say star man, their young driver star man, if you will. They're giving him up and putting him in a lower team. Now, yes, this is going to mean he's going to have to try more, have more if he wants to get points. He's going to have to have much more of an impact on that car if he's going to want to score points. Whereas in the Force India, it's not a consistent point scorer this year, but it's a car that is in the top 5-6 teams in the Constructors. So, it's obviously a lot easier to score points, like I say, but it's more easy for Mercedes to track his progress. Not only just behind the scenes, but even, I know it sounds daft, but on the TV screens, we see Ocon. How many times this year can you say, well, how many even minutes of footage have you seen Sergei Sorokin this year in Formula 1? Can you definitively say how well Sorokin's done this year? The only thing you can really judge it on is qualifying order, which I know a lot of fans don't even bother checking those lower areas, and also points scored. Now, Sorokin hasn't scored any points this year, but if I was going to say who I think's had the better season out of Sorokin and Stroll, I probably would just about lean towards Sergei Sorokin. This weekend in Spa, was fighting in the lower end of the top 10. We rarely got to see it on screen, but he's come away with nothing. So if Ocon was in that position, would the hype around Ocon, would that vanish? And arguably, with a lack of wheel-to-wheel racing with other drivers, because of the car difference in speed with that Williams, would that make him a little bit rusty? Would that put Mercedes off potentially? I don't know. And for Ocon, it's obvious, isn't it? No chances to fight at the front at all. I mean, this weekend he could have made a dive for the lead in Spa on the opening lap. He's not going to have that chance if he goes to Williams. And if he gets stuck there for the rest of this year and then next year, that'll be a horrific move for him. Unless Williams can get their act together. That's the big factor, I think, here. If Williams can really put together a great pitch, they say, look, we've started working on next year's car months ago. We were the first of the teams, obviously they won't know, but we were the first of the teams, let's say, to start looking at next year's car. We are going to have a great package next year. We will not be at the back. Let's see what you got. You know, if Williams are going to be like that, and I think to be fair to Williams, I don't think it's a complete stab in the dark to move back up. They know what their issues are with that car. With a Mercedes engine, they could very well be fighting in Force India's position next year. They really could. In that midfield this year, we've seen, weekend to weekend, the midfield cars, you never know who's going to be that fourth or ninth fastest car. You don't have a clue. The only definitive, really, positions for cars is that Ferrari, Mercedes, Red Bull will be the top three, and Williams will be the worst. Except McLaren are now fighting for that position, really. But they're the definitives, the absolutes. So if Williams can make that jump, which I don't think should be too difficult for a team like them, it could be more attractive for Ocon. But I think, in the meantime, McLaren's probably the team you would put your money on out of the two to perform more, considering the budget they have, considering the links they have, the personnel. It's hard, isn't it? Especially considering McLaren have gone backwards this year. It really is. But I think for next year in particular, the better move for Ocon will be to go to McLaren. Now, something as well, I'll just throw out there. Ocon sports a red helmet when he's not carrying BWT colours. Red and orange. Not too sure how that would look. Just throwing that out there. And, well, would he change his helmet for the rest of the year? That'd be interesting to see, especially with Lance Stroll as well. He'd most likely go to a pink helmet as well. So I do love helmet changes. Showing a bit lighter there, a little bit off topic, but they are the two places Ocon could go. And like I say, I would say he's more likely to end up at McLaren replacing Van Dorn. But that still leaves a hole at Williams. I mean, again, very easily, they could fit in Stoffel Van Dorn. But once again, F1's not as easy as that. And media reports, again, disagree with that. They say, no. You've got it all wrong. The man going into the Williams first team seat will be Robert Kubica. Now, I have said on this channel a few times, back in the day, I was a big fan of Robert Kubica. He was my guy. He was the man I supported through thick and thin. He was the reason I ended up supporting Lotus and becoming a diehard fan of Lotus. So the fact he's back in F1, you'd think a Kubica fan would want him in the seat. I'm not too sure. I'm really not. And for the marketing, for the team, that'd be fantastic. They obviously have a lot of trust in him. And supposedly, according to multiple sources within the team, he has been the one driving and pushing forward the development. Whether that's the case or not, we don't really know, and that's definitely a sort of twisted media story that gets views and clicks, so it's very difficult to say if that is fake news or not. But I think it's too much of a fairy tale. I really do. And when you see him on board, the footage of him driving, yes, it looks fine. But I just think the limitations, though on a lap completely by himself, he's fine. In the qualifying lap, he'll be fine. How is he going to cope in a situation like this weekend if he's the one, like Fernando Alonso was, being chucked up into the air? Is that a liability too much for Williams and for Robert himself? And as well, is the pace there? Because the worst thing that could happen is for this incredible fairy tale story, him to get back in the car and to be beaten comfortably by Sergei Sorokin every weekend. I mean, that would not be the fairy tale everyone wanted, however good the fact that he would be back in that seat. For me, the better option for Williams, you all know what I'm going to say, is Pascal Wehrlein. He needs to be in F1. This is his final chance. He's got to be the one now that's knocking on these doors, even though this is all speculation at the moment. He's got to be the one who can push himself into F1 again now. I'd love to see Pascal Wehrlein back in F1 next weekend. That would be a dream come true. That sounds weird. But I've said for so long, he was so good in his 2 years in the sport. He really was. He was better than Ocon. He was. He comfortably outperformed Marcus Ericsson in the Sauber last year, more so than Leclerc's doing this year. Again, that might be a bit of a stretch. But still, he really did comfortably outperform both those guys. Why isn't he in F1? Well, mainly because Alfa Romeo bought out Sauber. That's really the reason why. And Force India had Ocon instead, supposedly because Wehrlein was hard to work with. Again, those stories are just in the media. You can't really take them too seriously, but they've been reported several times, so that very well could be an issue. But that doesn't take away from the fact he's an underlying talent and deserves to be in F1. And I think Williams should take... It's not even a risk. They should get him in. And if Kubica comes in, like I say, a great story. It really is. And for the remaining 8 races of the year, that would be fantastic. To bring that market in, especially considering Martini's leaving them at the end of the year, they need sponsorships. So they might be thinking around that sort of basis. But if next year they want drivers that can perform, I think they need to get in Pascal Wehrlein. And I think a few of you would agree with me on that. But if I was a betting man, like I say, Stroll, I think, will go to Force India. As of next weekend, this is. Ocon to McLaren. And I think it will be Kubica in at Williams, which I don't know how I feel about that. I don't know, we'll have to wait and see. But, like I say, we'll have to know before Thursday. Or else it won't be happening. So, a lot of question marks around this. And of course, seats still haven't been filled for next year. Not only have those 3 teams that I've mentioned still got seats, we've also got seats at Toro Rosso. That's completely wide open. They've got 2 free seats. Sauber as well. They've, in theory, got 2 free seats. And Ferrari, they still have a seat. So, the F1 world, F1 2019 transfers, and I suppose 2018 transfers, are still completely up in the air. So I'd love to know your thoughts. I'd love to know if you think these changes are going to go through by the time we get to Monza. Because over the weekend, that news was everywhere. But yesterday it seemed to die down. But knowing Formula 1, as I think a lot of us do, Formula 1 loves to do that. Just completely out of the blue, throw us a bit of a curveball, say, oh, we're quiet. No news, don't worry, don't worry, don't worry. Psych! Everyone's changing positions. That sort of thing. So, I don't know. I'd love to know your thoughts on that. But let's move on then to the big crash at the beginning of this weekend's Belgian Grand Prix. So, you might have already questioned, why is this a topic in today's Let's Talk F1? Well, there's a couple of reasons why. And the first is that there's a few things I needed to clear up in terms of the crash itself, and a few things I didn't mention in yesterday's race review. So it's come out that there was no issue at all on Nico Hülkenberg's car. There he is on the right hand of the screen, locked up, braking point completely wrong, ploughed straight into the back of Alonso, off his own driving capabilities. A very rare mistake from Nico Hülkenberg, but like I say, locked up all 4 tyres, said it was a little bit to do with the dirty air, a little bit to do with misjudging his braking point. Well, I think the consequences were a little bit bigger than Nico sort of alluded to. The best crash of the season so far. Great that everyone was safe, but Hülkenberg has been given a 10-place grid penalty next time out at Monza, which could really hurt the Renault team that scored 0 points this weekend and look unlikely to score at all again in Monza. So that's a big one for the team. On the other side of the screen, you can just about see Valtteri Bottas. He also got caught up in a few smashes on the opening lap. He went straight into the back of Sergei Sorokin, similar to what Hülkenberg did, but not quite as dire consequences. Bottas lost the front of his front wing, was able to keep on going, but he was given a 5-second penalty at the end of the race, which had no effect at all in the end. But I just wanted to get that one clear as well. But the main reason I just wanted to talk about this and talk about the crash in general is the response I've seen from a lot of people in regard to the halo. Now, if we look at this image here, take that in for a second, that is a clear tyre mark that would have hit Charles Leclerc on the head. Now, for me, that is evidence enough that we need the halo in F1. And I know already some people have clicked the dislike button like they did on my review for the Belgian Grand Prix. This has got to be in the sport. This saved a life today. And we've only had 13 races with the halo. Yes, we haven't really had a huge crash like that in F1 since 2012 on that magnitude. But it can happen any race. This could happen again next weekend at Monza. You never know what's going to happen in Formula 1. You can see in that picture there, this device saved Charles Leclerc's life this weekend, and I think a lot of the haters have been silenced and are on board with it now, but some are still not, and I think, personally, I think that's a shame. Yes, it's not the most aesthetically pleasing, and I'd love to know if you're still against the halo, why you still are, because, I don't know, for me, it's not the ugliest thing in the world. I think the majority of fans have gotten used to it this year. Yes, the aero screen is much better, but at the results it got this weekend, at the results it's got in Formula 2 on several occasions this year, it's needed. And if it's got to be the halo instead of the aero screen, at least for the next couple of years, I think it's got to be there. But it's something I'd love to know your thoughts on this, because especially yesterday, a lot of people not liking my review because of the fact I said the halo had saved lives. I don't know. I'd love to know your thoughts on that one. But move on to something a little bit cheerier. Let's move on to the F2 report. I've only done 2 F2 reports, I think. Yeah, but this is the first weekend back of F2 since launching the show. Let's move on to that. So welcome back to the Formula 2 report. Like I just mentioned, we've only ever done, I'm not even sure if it's even 2, I think we've just done 1 Formula 2 report ever. This is the first ever race weekend review we're going to go through. And what I'm going to do, just to keep it nice and simple for you guys, is go through the qualifying, then the race 1 top 6, then the race 2 top 6, and then we'll have a little look at the championship standings, because I know a lot of you guys don't really know a lot about Formula 2 or know little odds and bods. Just want to know really who are the best up and coming drivers, who is going to be in line for F1 seats next year, which I think a lot of you are going to be aware of George Russell and Lando Norris, both of whom had pretty good weekends. Qualifying, both of them made it into the top 6. It was Nick de Vries, another McLaren young driver, who got pole position. George Russell on the front row once again in P2. Sergio Sette Camara got 3rd. Luca Giotto 4th. Norris P5 and Alex Albon P6. Currently going into this race, it was Russell leading the championship, Norris 2nd and Albon 3rd. And you know what? It looks like in the second half of the season, it's going to be the exact same again. Those three fighting it out for this championship. All three of them, even before this weekend, were comfortably in the lead of this championship. So qualifying pretty much went the way of George Russell. Very, very close times up and down the top six, except Nick de Vries, who got pole position, was 4/10 clear of George Russell in second. A great job from the Dane, considering he'd been a little bit up and down this year. Was rumours at the beginning of the year that he might be next in line for that McLaren seat, but Lando Norris has edged him in his first year of Formula 2. But who knows, De Vries could have the best end of the season ever and do another weekend like he did this weekend. Feature race, race number 1. The race worth more points, 25 laps. Formula 2's best drivers battling it out. Nick de Vries made it look easy, if I'm being perfectly honest with you. He actually nailed the Spa circuit, getting that feature race win. P2 was Sergio Sette Camara. His first ever Formula 2 win came at this circuit last year. So he was, you know what, he's been a little bit up and down as Sergio Sette Camara, the Brazilian. He has been rumoured a little bit with Formula 1, but nothing too crazy. He's not really in this championship fight all too much. George Russell, third place for him. Went backwards in the race compared to qualifying, but still a podium finish, a solid job. Lando Norris, P4, picking up some good points for Carlin. Alex Albon, P5, and Artem Markelov picking up P6. Second race, reverse grid. Nicholas Latifi, his first win of the season. I think that's his first win since Silverstone last year. He's been driving for Dams this year. Alex Albon is his teammate, and many people thought at the beginning of the year that Latifi would be that team leader instead of Albon. It's actually been the other way round, but this race was the first real race of the season of any note for Nicholas Latifi. It really has. He's been very, very quiet indeed all year. I think his best result before this was a 4th place, and yes, I'm just having a look now in Azerbaijan, 2 4th places, but apart from that, his highest place at all was 6th. So that really shows you what a pretty awful season he has had, to be perfectly honest with you. But that being said, with 6 rounds to go, finally picking up that win. The Force India test driver, the Force India reserve driver, is that going to be enough to give him a seat in Formula 1 ever? No, but a win is a win, and I'm sure he came away very happy from this one after a solid race indeed. Lando Norris, great job from him, finishing P2 for Carlin. Alex Albon, P3. Nick de Vries, 4th. Artem Markelov, 5. Luca Giotto, 6th. George Russell all the way down in 7th. Difficult day for George Russell, and despite going into the weekend with a whopping 18-point lead, not much at all, is it, in Formula 2? It now slashes down to 5 points. George Russell just ahead of Lando Norris. Lando Norris has only missed points on 2 occasions this year. Once coming in the feature race in France, the other in the sprint race at Austria. But he's been Mr. Consistent this year, Lando Norris. George Russell, once again this weekend, repeated the trend of a great first race and a poor second race. He seems to have done that quite a few times this year. Seems to do well in qualifying, and he's very good being on pole, running away with it. But when he has to come through traffic in that sprint race, a few question marks over that. But like I say, 5-point difference between the two Brits, and it's going to come right down to the wire in Abu Dhabi to see who wins the F2 Championship. Alex Albon, he's only 26 points behind George Russell, so he's still in contention. A good weekend from him can chuck him straight up to the top. And Nick de Vries, he's only 35 points behind. So it's all in contention in the F2 Championship, but it still looks like the 2 British drivers that will be taking the crown, which is nice to see for British motorsport, if I'm being perfectly honest with you. Just a quick mention, a new driver came into Formula 2 this weekend, Roberto Merhi. Yes, Roberto Merhi. He's in F2. He has been for the past couple of years, especially after he got kicked out of F1. Didn't do a full year of F1, so was able to come back. He was kicked out this weekend, and in came Boccolacci. Boccolacci, it's very difficult to pronounce that name. He came in for MP Motorsport. Didn't score any points, But someone who did score points for the first time this year was Roy Nassani. He picked up 1 point in the feature race, finally scored. He'll be happy with that, but still right at the bottom of those standings. He's done every single race. He's the lowest driver who's done every single race of the season so far. But I think that's it for Formula 2 on the Formula 2 report. A little bit different this weekend. I didn't get a chance to see both races properly, so I only saw the highlights, so it was a little bit difficult. Very, very busy. But in the future, I plan to do a bit more of a race rundown on this show, rather than just going through the results. But I'd also love to know what you guys would like to see on the F2 report, because I also am aware that quite a few of you are more interested in seeing the championship fight, so maybe something like today is more your style, so I'd love to know that. But let's move on to my career mode announcement and the end of Let's Talk F1. Now, I could just announce this in your normal standard, I'm driving for so-and-so team. That's boring. I don't want to do it that way. But I do want to mention, this is not going to be your bog standard career mode. This is not going to be, let's just record a career mode and just throw it out there. Everyone's doing that. This will be a fully in-depth, almost realistic career mode. Let's see what you think. The F1 2018 season will forever be known as the Fight for 5. Lewis Hamilton and Sebastian Vettel make it the first ever Formula 1 season to feature 2 four-time world champions. This year the sport will have 3 rookies in their first year of Formula 1. Sergei Sirotkin at Williams, Charles Leclerc at Sauber, and Dan Wood will be driving in one of Formula 1's most historic teams. Now the challenge won't be easy. Points might not be on the cards every weekend, if at all. A young buck teammate along with myself. This should be a fantastic journey from Formula 1 backmarkers to potentially Formula 1 world champions. The team I'll be driving for in my F1 2018 career mode is McLaren. Yes, McLaren had taken the gamble on young British prospect Dan Wood. He's going to be up against Stoffel Van Dorn as the two McLaren boys look to take McLaren back to greatness, back to the podium, back to the top step, back to championship wins. This is my F1 2018 career mode, which will be coming out very, very shortly. So there it is, it's out in the open. Career mode has been announced. I've already done quite a few of the races so far in this season, and it's a really thrilling journey already. The reason I've not brought it out so quickly is because I'm transferring to my new laptop, which is why I'm announcing now as well. This will be my last ever Let's Talk F1 in this sort of style. Next week, we're going to have brand new graphics package for everything, completely everything. Also, I want to mention, I was going to do the weekly mailbox this weekend. Well, not even this weekend, this episode on Let's Talk F1. We had a couple of questions, but the only one I liked was from David Pesha asking me who I was going to be driving for in my career mode. So that was for you, David. Thank you for your support, as always. And for the rest of you, thank you, as always, for getting behind this channel. You've been incredible, as always. Thank you for watching this far. I still can't get over the fact that some of you guys get this far. You are the real G's. Like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.